The system can shoot down objects as small as a soccer ball, even if they're flying at supersonic speeds.
We also face rival powers, Russia and China.
Former military officials claim China and Russia are together, hanging out, holding hands, practicing for military strikes against the U.S.
And over in the U.S., Defense Secretary James Mattis says the best way for America to avoid war is if its troops are, quote, ready to go. Speaking to soldiers on Friday, he said U.S. diplomats rely on the military's preparedness, which allows them to speak with authority in negotiations. Won Jung-han with the details.
Storm clouds are gathering over the Korean peninsula, U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis said on Friday. Mattis was speaking to soldiers and airmen at the 82nd Airborne Division's Hall of Heroes in North Carolina as part of his holiday tour of bases to greet troops. He didn't go so far as to predict armed conflict, but he said America will have the best chance of preventing one if its words are backed up by a strong military. A military that is ready to take action, he said, will give weight to the words of diplomats as they try to put an end to North Korea's nuclear and missile programs. Mattis's remarks came as the United Nations adopted tough new sanctions on North Korea, seeking to ban around 90% of the regime's imports of refined petroleum products. While the defense secretary has highlighted the importance of military preparedness, telling the troops to read the book, A Study in Unpreparedness, published in a decade after the Korean War ended in 1953, to get an idea of what went wrong the last time around. Reports have suggested recently that the U.S. was considering evacuating the families of military personnel in South Korea, but Mattis said it hasn't reached that point yet. Mattis' remarks came as South Korea prepares to host the Winter Olympics in February in Pyeongchang, just 80 kilometers from demilitarized zone. Although analysts have warned that North Korea could try to disrupt the games with provocations, Mattis said he thinks that's unlikely.
400 surface-to-air missile system. It can hit low-flying targets, which are harder to intercept, at a range of 400 kilometers. Maximum target speed of that missile is 4.8 kilometers a second.
Seek and destroy. Planes, helicopters, and even missiles, you name it. The S-400 Triumph can locate and hunt down almost any flying target.
First, the target is spotted and identified. Then the system starts monitoring it, or following its course. Then the command makes the call to either eliminate the target or not. After getting the green light, the system opens fire.
One of the strong suits of the system is its mobility. It can literally create full-scale air defense anywhere on the ground within minutes.
Preparation takes not more than 5 minutes, and everything's done by 3 people, 1 officer and 2 conscripting soldiers.
Each S-400 system consists of several elements. One radar, which monitors the skies looking for targets, a second one, which follows specific targets, a command post, and the launcher itself, or the gun, as it's called here in the Army. Combined, the elements of the system can follow up to 300 targets, flying from as low as just a few feet above ground and up to nearly 40 miles high in the skies, which is pretty much around 6 times higher than the average passenger jet. The first S-400 systems are already in service, and along with the older S-300 and Panzer S, protect the skies over Moscow, St. Petersburg, and the central industrial region of Russia. It is planned that the S-400 will completely replace the S-300. Its production has already been ended.
The S-300 is capable of intercepting targets not higher than 30 kilometers, which isn't enough since we're only covering small areas. But when the altitude capacity is raised, we can protect larger territories.
Analysts say recent conflicts have shown how vital it is to have reliable defense, not only from threats from the skies, but from space also. And this is what the S-400 was designed to do. It can locate targets nearly 600 kilometers away and has a firing range of up to 400 kilometers. That's around 5 times more than its Western analog, the Patriot. There are no plans for exporting it just yet, giving Russia a chance for an unprecedented advantage against any threat from the skies for at least the next 20 years.
Well, they are not bumping around here. U.S. and South Korean soldiers training in the mountains near where those Olympics will be held, not too far from Seoul. The former Deputy Secretary of State, Director of the National Intelligence, John Negroponte, joining us right now. Sir, always good to have you. Thank you for taking the time. You know, I'm increasingly wondering whether there will be an Olympics. I guess it depends on the next missile test or what we do in response or what the North Koreans do after that. But what do you think?
Well, I think this is not the time to flinch. I think we really need to go forward with these. I think the South Koreans are very capable of taking effective security measures, and we give them our full support in that. We've been drilling with them and getting ready, and I think that we can count on a safe Olympic Games, and if there is some kind of effort to disturb the games, I'm sure they'll handle that situation very well.
What do we do in the event the North Koreans up the missile testing, though, especially right before the February start of these?
Well, I mean, this is a very serious situation, and hopefully some kind of result will come from the efforts to pressure North Korea to abandon its program, or at least come to the negotiating table. I know there's a lot of diplomatic activity going on behind the scenes. I know there are efforts to enlist the support of the People's Republic of China. I think this is there's no silver bullet here, no easy solutions.
You know, I wonder, though, yesterday when President Trump had his America First national security speech, laid out our strategy, one of the things he said of China was that it was a strategic competitor. Ambassador said it's pursuing policies of economic aggression that's aimed at weakening the U.S., and by association, Russia isn't much better. Whatever your individual thoughts on that, are we surprised then when China responds the remarks are reckless and irrational, and probably they're, at least verbally, less inclined to help us on this? What do you think?
Well, I think it's a bit of a dilemma on both sides. I think China has engaged in some behavior that is harmful to us, particularly in the economic realm, trade, protection of intellectual property, and so forth. On the other hand, the question of the Korean Peninsula has been something that the United States and China have consulted upon quite consistently for the past 25 years. And to the best of my understanding, that still continues. So I would hope, notwithstanding some of the rhetoric that is going on, that this will be an area of continued cooperation. I believe it's certainly in our mutual interest to do that.
Yeah, it would seem to be. You know, Ambassador, I'd be curious what you think would be deemed an act of war. I don't want to sound simplistic here, but a lot of people said we shoot down the next missile, or taking it to the next level, we shoot down the basis from which these missiles are launched, if that were to occur. Now, I guess it depends on what your definition of an act of war is, but either would be deemed an act of war, would it not?
Well, I think the problem is that the more you contemplate a military approach to this matter, the more horrific or horrendous the outcome would appear to be, because there's probably no way, if it does come to blows, of avoiding some kind of retaliation by North Korea against South Korea, since the city of Seoul is so vulnerable to even conventional artillery attacks from the north. So I think once you go down the road of a military approach to these things, the going could get very rough.
You know, the fear seems to be that anything economically we've tried, sir, has failed. Any promises we've tried to exact out of the Chinese have not come to fruition. Maybe behind the scenes that's just not true. But that there's constant cynicism expressed within the Trump White House that the Chinese are even approaching doing anything substantive to rein North Korea in. Do you agree with that?
Well, ultimately, I think we and the Chinese have got to try to come to some agreement about what kind of Korean peninsula we want to see, and then put it in some kind of a context. I think the Chinese have some concerns that if this is subjected to some kind of random occurrences, that we could end up with U.S. troops on the Yalu River, or with North Korean refugees flooding into China. Those are the kinds of things they don't want to see. The only way I can see of avoiding that is for us and them to engage in intense diplomacy about the outcome that we want on the peninsula, and then work together along with our allies in Japan and South Korea to achieving that. I think it can be done, but it's a tough row to hoe. It's the toughest problem that's come along in a long time.
Russia's hacked into a lot of things. China's hacked into a lot of things. Russia even hacked into the Democratic National Committee. Maybe even some state election systems. So we've got to step up our game. Make sure we are well defended and able to take the fight to those who go after us. As president, I will make it clear that the United States will treat cyber attacks just like any other attack. We will be ready with serious political, economic, and military responses.
И люди не чувствуют опасности. Вот меня что беспокоит. Ну как мы не можем понять? Мы тащим мир вообще в совершенно новое измерение. Вот в чем проблема. Делают вид, что как будто ничего не происходит. Но я не знаю даже, как достучаться.
We're flying over Estonia now, but just over to the east, to the right, is Russia.
We need to be ready. We should not be afraid.
Ready for?
Ready for opportunistic behavior of Putin's Russia.
These US Marines are about to perform their first ever amphibious landing from the Black Sea onto the Ukrainian coastline.
15 amphibious assault vehicles packed with both US and Ukrainian Marines secured a beach south of the port city of Odessa before heading inland as part of the annual multinational naval exercise Sea Breeze.
This year the US Navy deployed 2 ships, the USS Ross, a guided missile destroyer, and this ship, the USS Whidbey Island, which acted as a launching pad for the amphibious operation.
The Black Sea is bounded by 6 countries linking southeastern Europe and western Asia. Since the Russian annexation of Crimea in 2014, the security situation here has been very tense at times.
Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko has instructed all military units near Crimea and in the eastern Donbass region to be at their highest level of combat readiness.
We need to be ready. We should not be afraid.
Ready for?
Ready for opportunistic behavior of Putin's Russia.
North Korea is denouncing a new American nuclear strategy that calls for the U.S. to enhance its arsenal of low-yield nuclear weapons. A spokesperson for the North Foreign Ministry's Institute of American Studies says the U.S. strategy is a declaration of war against the world.
As part of our defense, we must modernize and rebuild our nuclear arsenal, hopefully never having to use it, but making it so strong and so powerful that it will deter any acts of aggression by any other nation or anyone else. Perhaps someday in the future there will be a magical moment when the countries of the world will get together to eliminate their nuclear weapons. Unfortunately, we are not there yet.